I always believed I could sense danger long before it reached me. I believed I understood people, especially the ones closest to me. I believed my marriage was something solid, something that couldn't simply crumble without a loud warning. I was wrong. And the worst part is, the collapse didn't begin with anything dramatic. No screaming, no slammed doors, no late-night confessions. It started quietly, almost politely, like a faint draft in a room with closed windows. You feel it, but you tell yourself it's nothing. Back then, I was working too much, far too much. I told myself it was temporary, that I needed to stabilize the project, that the extra income would help us finally renovate the apartment, maybe buy a car, maybe take a trip somewhere warm. But the truth was simpler. I had forgotten how to stop. Whenever life grew quiet, I filled the silence with work because silence means hearing your own thoughts, and mine weren't always pleasant. Meanwhile, my wife, Elena, lived next to me but not with me. I didn't notice the shift at first. She still sat with me at dinner, still asked me about work, still kissed me goodnight. But small things began to change: her tone, the length of her pauses, the frequency with which she reached for her phone during breakfast. She used to ramble about the smallest details: a funny coworker, a stray cat that followed her home, a recipe she wanted to try. But lately, breakfast had become silent. She chewed absent-mindedly, scrolling through something on her screen, nodding without really listening. I told myself people change, moods shift, stress happens. Not everything is a sign of war. But looking back now, those were the first cracks. One evening I came home an hour earlier than usual. It wasn't planned. I simply felt exhausted and left work before my colleagues even noticed. When I opened the door, the apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. Elena was in the kitchen, leaning over her phone, smiling at something with a softness I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "Hey," I said. She didn't hear me. I repeated myself, louder this time. She jumped slightly, locked her phone almost instantly, and then gave me a tight, uncomfortable smile. "You're home. So early." Her reaction wasn't just odd. It hit me somewhere deep, in that instinctual part of a man that knows when something is off. Her quick movement, the way she put the phone down screen side down. It felt rehearsed. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired, right?" She kept glancing at the phone, almost expecting it to vibrate again. And for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't in the room with her at all. I was just a background noise she had learned to tune out. During the next few days, I started paying attention. Not because I was paranoid, but because something inside me whispered, "Watch." I noticed her new perfume, which she never mentioned buying. Her sudden meetings at work that kept her late. Her shorter answers to my questions. Her screen lighting up with messages she never allowed me to see. She had stopped kissing me first. Stopped hugging me when I returned home late. Stopped asking where I had been. One night, while she was brushing her teeth, I finally forced myself to ask, "Are you pulling away from me?" She froze for just barely a second, but I saw it. A micro-reaction, but enough to cut me. "What?" "No," she said quickly, "just tired." But her eyes contradicted her. She wasn't with me. She was somewhere else completely, somewhere I wasn't invited. And that's when the thought I had been avoiding finally surfaced. Not fully, not clearly, but like the shadow of something terrible forming behind a curtain. Is there someone else? I shook it off. It was too early to jump to conclusions. People drift apart sometimes. Stress creates distance. I tried to rationalize, tried to be the calm, reasonable husband who doesn't create problems out of thin air. But then came the night that changed everything. On 1 a.m., I woke up because the light from the hallway spilled into the bedroom. Elena wasn't beside me. Her footsteps were soft, but I could hear them. I thought maybe she couldn't sleep, maybe she went for water. But she didn't return. I waited a minute, then 2, then 5. The hallway stayed lit. When I finally got up and walked quietly toward the light, I heard her whispering. Not loudly, just enough that I could distinguish the tone. A soft, warm tone she hadn't used with me in a very long time. She was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, phone in hand, her face glowing from the screen. She wasn't crying. She wasn't upset. She was smiling in a way that made my stomach twist. I stood there, frozen, listening, but not hearing words, only the inflection. A tone you recognize instantly when you've heard it before. A tone meant for someone you feel connected to. She didn't know I was watching her silhouette from the hallway. And I didn't know what hurt more, the possibility of betrayal or the certainty that her happiness in that moment had nothing to do with me. When I finally stepped forward, making my presence known, she flinched so hard she nearly dropped the phone. "Why are you awake?" she asked too quickly. "I could ask you the same," I said. Her hand tightened around the phone. The screen went dark. "It's nothing," she said, but her voice trembled. And that was the moment I understood. Something inside our marriage had broken a long time ago, and I had only just heard the sound. The night I found Elena whispering into her phone didn't end with a confession or a confrontation. I wish it had. I wish she had looked at me with guilt in her eyes, or anger, or even fear, anything instead. She simply froze, swallowed hard, and whispered, "It's nothing," and I, like an idiot, like a man who still wanted to believe, let her walk past me as if the weight in my chest wasn't real. But after that night, a switch flipped in me. Whether I wanted to or not, I became aware of every detail. My senses sharpened. My patience shrank. My tolerance for excuses vanished completely. People say that once doubt enters your mind, it becomes a parasite. It feeds on silence, on unanswered questions, on locked screens, on late nights, on sudden smiles that aren't meant for you. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't rest. And it grows quickly, too quickly for you to keep pretending everything is normal. The next morning, Elena acted unusually cheerful. She made breakfast, something she hadn't done for weeks. She hummed a little, poured me coffee, even asked about my day. To someone else, it might have looked like a loving gesture, but to me, it felt like a cover-up, like she was trying to rewrite yesterday by drowning it in domestic warmth. When she placed the cup on the table, I noticed something I shouldn't have. She was wearing the perfume she normally saved for special occasions. The one she wore on our anniversary. Why now? Why on a random Wednesday? Why after whispering to someone at 1 a.m.? "New plans today?" I asked casually. She shook her head. "No, just work." But she avoided my eyes. And I knew she was lying still. I didn't push. A direct confrontation too early only gives the other person time to build better walls. I needed facts, concrete facts, not emotions, not guesses, not shadows. That day, instead of driving straight to work, I parked 2 blocks away from our building and waited. If she really was going to work, I would leave it alone. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe she really had insomnia and called a friend. But if she wasn't, at 8:37 a.m., Elena finally came out of the entrance. She walked fast, her expression focused but tense. I watched her from behind the tinted windows of my car. She didn't take the usual route to her office. She didn't head toward the bus stop or the metro. Instead, she turned the opposite direction, toward a street filled with cafes and private houses. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I followed her slowly, keeping distance. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was vibrating through the car. After 10 minutes, she stopped in front of a small cafe, not one she ever mentioned. She stood there, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, glancing around anxiously, waiting for someone. At 8:46, a man appeared. Tall, dark hair, a little older than her, dressed well, but not in a business way, more casual, confident, comfortable. He approached her with a half smile, not wide, not exaggerated, but intimate, familiar, and Elena responded with a smile I hadn't seen in months. A real one, a warm one. Something inside me twisted violently. He placed a hand on her elbow, a small, subtle touch, but Elena didn't pull away. She leaned in slightly. They walked into the cafe. I sat in the car, staring at the door. They disappeared through my thoughts, a chaotic storm. I told myself to breathe, to think, to act rationally. But logic was slipping through my fingers like sand. After 3 minutes of suffocating silence, I got out of the car. Inside the cafe, they were sitting at a corner table, facing each other. Elena was animated, leaning forward, talking fast. The man listened carefully, occasionally nodding, occasionally touching her wrist in a way that made my vision blur for a moment. It wasn't the gestures alone. It wasn't even the secret meeting. It was the expression on her face, a softness reserved for someone important, someone she trusted, someone she wanted to impress, someone who wasn't me. I stood there for a few seconds before forcing myself to leave. I didn't want them to see me. I didn't want to create a scene. Not yet. Not without understanding the full truth. I returned to the car and sat there for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every scenario spun through my head. Maybe he was a coworker. Maybe they were discussing a project. Maybe she needed advice. But no matter how I twisted the possibilities, none of them explained the secrecy, the late-night whispers, the perfume, the smile. The truth was forming, slow but inevitable. When Elena came home that evening, she acted normal, too normal. I asked about her day. She told me about some boring meetings. She lied effortlessly. Did you go anywhere else? I asked. She shook her head. No. Why? No reason. I wanted the truth to slip out, but she didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. It was as if the morning never happened. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at the edge of the bed and stared at her phone on the nightstand, locked, guarded, a small device holding answers that could destroy or save me. I'm not the kind of man who snoops, or at least I wasn't, but betrayal changes your moral compass. It makes you question what's right and what's necessary. I didn't take the phone that night, but the thought stayed with me like a ticking clock. Over the next few days, her behavior shifted even more. She became distant, but only with me. With her phone, she was alive, glowing. With her friends, she was enthusiastic. With her coworkers, cheerful. With me, cold, careful, detached. One evening, she came home unusually late. She said she had office work. I couldn't hold it anymore. Who is he? I asked. Her expression didn't crack. She didn't blush, didn't panic, didn't show guilt. Instead, she gave me a disappointed look, as if I insulted her. What are you talking about? Elena, I saw you at the cafe. Her pupils expanded. Her breathing hitched for half a second, barely noticeable, but noticeable enough for someone who had been watching closely. That was a coworker, she said, in a cafe. During work hours? It was a private meeting with a coworker. Yes. What's his name? You don't know him. That's not an answer. She crossed her arms, defensive, irritated. I don't have to justify my work meetings to you. But it wasn't about work, and we both knew it. I took a step closer. Just tell me the truth. I did, she said. She walked past me, headed straight to the bedroom, closed the door, and didn't come out until morning. That night, I realized something painful. She wasn't scared of losing me. She wasn't worried about hurting me. She wasn't even trying to hide the fact she was hiding something, because in her mind, the decision was already made. The next day, the first real proof arrived, not from a grand confession, but from a mistake. While cleaning the living room, her phone buzzed on the table. A message preview flashed before the screen dimmed. I miss you too. 3 words. A simple sentence, but powerful enough to shatter any remaining denial. The sender's name wasn't saved. It was a number, but the tone, the familiarity, was unmistakably intimate. My body reacted before my thoughts did. My hand shook, my throat tightened, my heart hammered against my ribs with a force that felt violent. I sat down staring at the phone, breathing like someone who had just run a marathon. I didn't open it. I didn't touch it. But I didn't need to. The truth was now undeniable. But here's the thing about discovery. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. Once the curtain lifts, The show can't go back to pretending. Yet I didn't confront her that day, or the next, or the day after that, because I wanted the whole truth, not pieces. I wanted to understand how long it had been happening, whether it had crossed the line yet, and what my role had been in the destruction of my own marriage. So I started observing, listening, analyzing every expression, every lie, every sudden smile, every change in schedule, every whisper in the bathroom. And slowly, painfully, patterns formed, patterns that painted a picture much darker than I expected. She wasn't just drifting away. She was already gone. And the man she was drifting toward wasn't a stranger. He was someone she trusted, someone she felt safe with, someone who filled a place I once held, someone who had been around longer than I realized. I don't know when exactly it happened, the moment when pain turned into clarity. Maybe it wasn't a single moment at all, but a slow, steady accumulation of truths I didn't want to face. But by the time the third week rolled around, I was no longer guessing. I wasn't dying. I wasn't hoping that maybe I'd misread everything. I knew. What I didn't know yet was how far it had gone, how long it had been happening, or what Elena felt for him. Love, infatuation, curiosity, or was it simply an escape, a door she opened because she no longer felt at home with me? Whatever it wasn't accidental. By the time part of the puzzle clicked into place, the puzzle was already nearly complete. And that terrified me. It was a Saturday. Normally, Elena loved weekends. Even when our relationship cooled, even when distance grew between us, she always enjoyed slow mornings, coffee in bed, lazy breakfasts, scrolling through her phone while I tried to get her attention with a joke or a comment. But this time, she woke up tense, alert, restless. She checked her phone the moment she opened her eyes. Not casually, urgently. She typed something quickly, then turned the phone face down on the blanket, as if that tiny gesture could erase my suspicions. "What are your plans today?" I asked. She hesitated. Just a second. But I caught it. Hesitation always reveals more truth than any sentence. "Just work stuff," she said. "Some reports to finish on a Saturday." She shrugged. "Deadlines?" I nodded, pretending to accept the answer. But I'd already seen the message preview the day before. The same unsaved number writing, "Tomorrow morning works." Same place. Same place. Morning, tomorrow. I didn't ask questions because I didn't need to. Not anymore. After breakfast, she changed into clothes she never wore for work. Fitted jeans, a white blouse, a delicate necklace I bought her on our second anniversary. The most painful part wasn't the outfit itself. It was the care she put into her appearance. She looked more alive getting ready for another man than she had in months with me. When she left, she didn't even say goodbye. Just grabbed her purse, mumbled something about being back by lunch, and left. The door closed softly. I sat on the couch, staring at the hallway as if she might return and explain everything. Of course she didn't. I waited 5 minutes, enough to make sure she wasn't coming back for something she forgot. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. This time, I didn't trail her car. I knew where she was going. The same cafe. The place that had become their meeting spot. The spot where my marriage died without me even realizing it. I parked across the street and waited. Ellen arrived at 9:12 a.m. He arrived at 9:15. When he saw her, something in his posture softened. He smiled. She smiled back. No awkwardness, no guilt, no discomfort. Just familiarity. And the way she hugged him, brief, subtle, but meaningful, told me more than any words ever could. It wasn't physical betrayal that hurt me the most. It was emotional. She looked at him the way she used to look at me. She listened to him the way she used to listen to me. She touched him the way she used to reach for me without thinking. I watched them walk inside, laughing about something. Elena tossed her hair, leaned closer, her hands animated as she talked. She looked young again, light, unburdened. Happy. And in that moment, I felt something inside me crack. quietly, cleanly, like glass snapping under pressure. Not loud, not dramatic, just inevitable. I didn't go inside the cafe. I didn't want a scene, not yet. Instead, I sat in the car and stared at the building like someone watching their life from the outside. At one point, I saw Elena lift her phone, show him something, and laugh. He reached across the table, gently took her wrist, and pulled her hand a little closer so he could see the screen. She didn't pull away, even though it was a public place, even though anyone could see them. She didn't care. That's what hurt the most. When you're trying to hide something, you act cautious. You look around, you avoid physical closeness, you choose private spaces. Elena wasn't being careful anymore. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't protecting anything. Not me, not us, not our marriage. The truth was simple and merciless. She didn't fear losing me, because she had already replaced me. They spent nearly an hour inside the cafe. When they came out, they walked together for a while, not holding hands, but close enough that the intent was obvious. I followed them on foot from a distance, my heart pounding in a way that made me dizzy. It felt like watching two strangers. But worse, watching my wife, the woman I loved, with someone she was growing to love more than me. Eventually they stopped near a small alley behind the cafe. He said something. She laughed, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He stepped closer, too close. She didn't move away. Their foreheads touched for a moment. It wasn't a kiss. It was worse. It was something intimate, something gentle, something loving, something that meant they had crossed a point of no return. I didn't take a photo. I didn't need to. That image is burned into my mind forever. I walked away before they noticed me. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed air, space, silence. Anything that wasn't the sound of her voice mixed with someone else's. I ended up sitting on a bench several streets away, staring at the pavement while my breath came in uneven waves. A few people passed by, probably assuming I was tired or hungover. None of them could imagine what was actually happening inside me. I wasn't crying. Not yet. Tears require acceptance, and I wasn't ready to accept anything. I just sat there with a single question repeating in my mind. Why? We had problems. Sure, every couple does. But betrayal, secrets, another man. When did I become someone she could lie to so easily? Was it my fault? Was I not enough? Did I miss warning signs? Did I push her away? Was this inevitable? Or did she simply stop loving me and never had the courage to say it? Pain doesn't kill you. Questions do. I returned home long before Elena did. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, waiting for something, maybe clarity, maybe strength, maybe numbness. At 1:27 p.m., I heard her keys. When she walked in, she didn't look guilty or anxious. She looked relaxed, light, radiant, like someone who had just spent the morning with a person who made her feel alive. How was work? I asked. She didn't blink. Fine, she lied to my face without even hesitating. I nodded, pretending to accept it. Good. She walked to the kitchen, humming softly. Humming like nothing was wrong. Like she wasn't tearing our life apart. Like she wasn't breaking me slowly, piece by piece. I stood behind her, watching her pour water into a glass. Do you still love me? I asked. The glass froze in her hand. The humming stopped. She turned around slowly, her expression neutral, not shocked, not scared, just blank. Why would you ask that? She said quietly. I stepped closer. Because I don't feel it anymore. She looked at me for a long moment, searching my face for something, maybe an accusation, maybe evidence, maybe hope. Then she said the sentence that split me open. I don't know. 3 words, simple, soft, cruel. Not yes. Not of course. Not don't be ridiculous. Just, I don't know. And that was the moment I reached my breaking point. Not because she didn't love me, but because she didn't even care enough to pretend she did. That night, she slept facing the wall. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, knowing sleep wouldn't come, not anymore. Because once I don't know enters a marriage, it becomes a ghost, one that follows you everywhere, whispering all the truths you're afraid to hear. I don't know how long I lay awake, but when dawn finally came, one realization settled in my chest with finality. I had lost her. Not today, not yesterday, not last week, a long time ago. I just didn't want to see it. I woke up that morning knowing exactly what I needed to do. No more rehearsing speeches in my head. No more replaying every memory like a punishment loop I couldn't escape. I'd spent days sorting through the truth. Not just the truth about her cheating, but the truth about myself, the lies I told myself to avoid the pain, the excuses I made to delay what had to happen. I wasn't waking up as the same man I was when this started. Something inside me had hardened and cleared. It wasn't anger anymore. Anger is loud, chaotic, uncontrollable. What I felt now was quiet, steady, and final. I wasn't going to fight for someone who had walked away from me long before I realized she was already gone. I didn't eat breakfast. Didn't need it. The tension in my chest was enough to keep me awake, aware, focused. I grabbed the envelope I'd prepared the previous night, documents, explanations, the practical closure to match the emotional one, and walked out the door. The air outside felt colder than it should have. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was the remains of who I used to be peeling away as I walked, step by step, toward what had to be done. I wasn't trembling. My hands were steady. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I wasn't confused. I knew she would be home. She had texted me earlier, something short and empty, like she was trying to pretend everything was normal. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because there was nothing left to say through a screen. When I reached the door, I paused only for a second. I wasn't preparing myself. I was acknowledging the moment. Sometimes life splits in two without warning. One version of you walks into the past, the other steps out of it. I opened the door. She turned around quickly, startled. I could see in her eyes that she already knew. Maybe she'd known for a long time. Maybe she was just too afraid to say it first. Can we talk? She asked. I shook my head slightly. No, I didn't come to talk. I came to close this. Her face changed, not dramatically, not with tears or guilt or anger. It was a quiet recognition. She understood that this wasn't a negotiation, wasn't an argument, wasn't a scene. It was the final point in a sentence that had been dragging on for far too long. I set the envelope down on the table. Papers shifted slightly inside it, but neither of us reached for it. I'm not here to blame you, I said. I've already gone through that stage. I'm not here to ask questions. I already know the answers, and they wouldn't help me anyway. I'm not here to fix anything. There's nothing left to fix. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. So I continued, I'm here to end it completely. No half steps, no pauses, no maybe later. I'm walking away from all of this, not because I hate you, not because I want to hurt you, but because staying would destroy me. And I'm not willing to do that. Her eyes filled, but I kept my voice steady. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't warm either. I was simply done. You made your choice, I said quietly. And now I'm making mine. For a moment, we just stood there. Two people who once planned a future, now unable to even share the same air comfortably. I expected to feel something sharp, heartbreak, regret, grief, anything. But all I felt was release. She stepped forward slightly. Can we at least? No, I said, gently but firmly. We said everything already. Even when we weren't speaking, we said everything. Silence again. Heavy, final, necessary. I walked past her toward the door. Every step felt like a weight dropping from my shoulders. When I reached the doorway, I stopped just once more, not to look back, but to leave one last truth behind. I hope you learn from this, I said. I hope I do too. And then I left. The moment the door closed behind me, something inside me unlocked. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free, like I could breathe again without hurting myself. I didn't go home right away. I walked miles maybe, just letting the world move around me while I processed the quiet aftermath inside my head. At some point I sat down on a bench near an empty park and finally allowed myself to think about what comes next. Not love, not revenge, not healing in some dramatic, cinematic way. Just living for myself, for the first time in a long time. And that was enough. That was the real ending, not her betrayal, not my pain, not the final goodbye. The real ending was reclaiming my life, and the real beginning was everything that comes after.